As you can all see, we are so much excited and honored to have His Worship Jacob Mafume, the newly appointed Harare Mayor. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be here.
Great. And most Zimbabweans today, they are looking forward and they're expecting, they want to know. But just before we jump into exactly what they should be expecting from you, I think in a short one, who is His Worship Jacob Mafume? If you may just try and let us know who you are first.
Well, Jacob Mafume is a son of a headmaster and a teacher. Yeah, he's just a country boy who happened to study a few books, became a lawyer, has worked as a lawyer for around 20 years in various capacities. I'm a family man with a wife and 2 children, and the passion for Zimbabwe is just have worked in civic society, international NGOs, embassies, corporate sector, public sector, Prime Minister's office, and also now as an elected representative. I think I've gone full circle in terms of the areas that I've worked in, and a lot of philanthropy, sat on many boards, many institutions, originated a number of trusts and so forth. But basically, I'm a passionate Harare resident and a patriotic Zimbabwean who belongs to the MDC Alliance led by President.
Let's that many people are talking about right now. I know you were elected the new mayor. There's something that many people need to understand. If you can just help us clarify. There's an issue of MDC Alliance councillors being recalled, and you seem to be recall proof. Walk us through this. I know you came from the PDB party and you are also MDC Alliance. Can you just try and explain to us the actual issue there?
Well, there has been a judgment by the Supreme Court which says that the MDC Alliance was not, there was certain nullification of processes that happened years ago, and the Supreme Court judgment then said we should go back to that era. What has happened is that judgment has been erroneously interpreted to become an election petition in reverse. That judgment has led to a lot of elected representatives being called back from Parliament and from Council on the basis that the MDCT Secretary General is now Douglas Monzora. We totally disagree with that interpretation. But be that as it may, we felt that even let's go by the interpretation. So our party strategically deployed me to be a mayor since they'd recalled Mayor Gomba for no fault of his, by simply because of the diabolical interpretation of that judgment, which has upset the will of the people. We then said, okay, if they say they are going to recall every councillor, let's put myself, who was from PDP originally and joined the alliance, and now has become the mayor and therefore cannot be recalled, because we were aware that had we appointed somebody else, they would have recalled that particular person and we'll be back to square one.
So now we try and understand this. It now looks like there's a very, should I say, poisonous environment in the MDC Council. I don't know if you agree to that. You got 19 votes versus 14 votes. I know many people celebrated your victory, but if you ask me, it's worrisome, isn't it? That 14 more people are probably sitting on the fence or are more Coupe aligned?
They're not sitting on the fence. They were going to be recalled. They have no love for what they are doing. They know whose face they used to be elected, save for a very few. So I know that many of these people were threatened. And you know, when you're being threatened, the degree of fear is different from one person to the other. We hold no grudges. We do believe that we need to focus on residents' issues. The residents are not worried about our quarreling. The residents are not worried about our round robin. The residents are worried about service delivery. The collection of trash, provision of water, sewer, and so forth and so forth. So we cannot continue focusing on what makes us different. We should focus on what helps the residents. We have little time left before the next election. So that cannot be spent quarreling among ourselves. Yes, an election was held. It's water under the bridge. We move on. There's one thing that I have to emphasize. Zimbabweans have got a fixation on unanimity, 100% uniformity. Maybe it's because of the uniform we used to wear at school. There are many councils in the world. They are run by coalitions. Many councils in South Africa, there's EFF, DA, and ANC, and there's service provision. Sometimes diversity does not mean disunity. Sometimes diversity does not mean confusion. We must learn to celebrate our diversity and our difference at certain times. Or, better still, we should learn to work in a diverse environment. It's not every time where you have differences with another person, you cannot therefore fail to work towards what is the common good. At the end of the day, we'll go back to the electorate. They know who they want, they know what they need to do, and they'll bring back a different council. But for now, our task is to make sure we deliver for the residents and that they're able to live well today without us disrupting it through round-robin politics.
Mm-hmm. So, sorry, just keep it around there before I move into the real issues. How do you then feel about the other councillors that are now seeming more to be MDCT aligned? Your feelings towards that? Look, the 14 that didn't vote for you?
They were being threatened, like I said. We love them. My president is my president.
But this was a secret ballot. Does it then exonerate them after the voting? How are they no longer under threat? Because we are not going to know which 14 they were.
Yeah, well, but sometimes, there are caucuses. Okay. If you sit in a caucus and there are 10, then you suddenly find one vote. You cannot say, therefore, you don't know who voted for who, because it's a small number, 30 people, and they sat at a caucus and agreed that the 10 of us are going to vote. Mm-hmm. So that is what they did. So the threat of recall was at that area. So we understand them. We need to save the residents. Our president is not vindictive. President Nelson Chamisa. He conquers through love, not conquers through vindictiveness, hate, retribution, and all that. Mm-hmm. His message has always been that I'm here to save, and I'm here to save Zimbabweans of all creed and color. And we simply follow that example. There's no retribution from my president, so therefore there will not be retribution from this mayor.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now let's jump straight to the is ahead of you. You are officially the newly elected mayor for Harare. That's a very huge job. Your short to medium term expectations. I know there's a lot of problems, specifically issues of water, refuse, potholes. Harare is not in a good state, if I'm to use a much more lighter word. What should we expect or foresee from you?
Well, look, we are in COVID-19 period. Everywhere in the world, even huge corporates have written off 2020. They are all in survival mode, except probably those that sell PPEs and sanitizers. Mm-hmm. But for everybody else who has been in business, it's been a deliberating period, and it's very difficult to give a rosy picture without looking dissonant with our environment. Our environment is bad. COVID is real. It has impacted the world in a big, big way in terms of how the economies function. So the immediate task is to try and get an understanding with government on how we open the economy of Harare. We do believe that the economy of Harare is opening too slowly. We have got combi operators who are not working. We've got informal sector who are struggling and are choked. We've got businesses who are not able to function because of a closed economy. So the immediate task is to find a safe way to open the Harare economy. So if you open the Harare economy, you make everything tick. Once the Harare economy is opened, which is our short-term goal, because we have to open it now, otherwise we are going to have more suffering and more dying and more other problems than we can handle. Once Harare opens, and we have agreed on how to open Harare gradually, then we will look at things like the normal things like refuse collection, water, um, dumping of our refuse, the roads, and other areas that require immediate attention, and then lay a solid plan for the future.
We have had this challenge even within the past mayor, who was also an MDC Alliance elected mayor. Why do we still have these challenges of refuse, dumping areas, and water issues? What seem to be the problem? Because we haven't really had sanity in that area.
Yeah, what we need is a bigger plan. It's a plan. You know the situation with our dams. The last time a dam was built was a long time ago. We've got 3 outstanding dams, Musani, Kunji, and Mubi Dam for Chitungwisa. Those 3 dams were supposed to then carry the weight. We are still using dams that were designed to carry the weight of 1 million people combined. But we need water sources. Then coupled with that, we have a yo-yo economic policy framework. Right now, our economic policy is somersaulted so many times, 1:1. Now we've got an auction rate, we've got an Austro dollar, we've got a US dollar. So that economic confusion also impacts every business and impacts the city. We cannot now afford chemicals on a regular basis. We need a lot of chemicals to purify the current water source. Current water source, Chivero, is also our dump site. It's also where we put the waste. And therefore, it needs a whole lot more chemicals to clean it.
Is that healthy? Our dump site is before we take a break, on that Chivero issue, do you think that is the best model, or we need to dump somewhere else?
Well, it is, because it recycles the water. It is the international norm. It was in how they designed it. It was best to make sure that we lose as minimum water as possible, and we
just recycle
recycle it back. But it requires a certain degree of efficiency. And you must remember that Lake Chivero is also helped by the Manyame Dam.
Yeah.
There's a tunnel that links Lake Chivero and there. So even the cleaner water there comes through the tunnel and mixes with the recycled water. But however, that has required a whole lot more chemicals than if we were taking from a dam where we were not damming. The problem of Harare was that it was built on a water source. So we built Harare, that's why the wetlands are key and so forth. We are sitting on top of our water source. So we have to catch the water before it goes to Mozambique and so forth and so forth. So now, we have not renewed those water sources. And then secondly, we have also not adequately upgraded our waterworks. It was built by an engineer who will be surprised to find that it is still working now. If you were to wake up, it's supposed to be a museum piece. He had designed it for 500,000 people.
Exactly.
Yes, we upgraded it.
And we have expanded so much.
Yeah, we are now 4 million.
Yeah.
And we have upgraded it through the Chinese loans. But it hasn't been enough. The upgrades have not been enough. And also we need to do with the water distribution network. Some of it, I think the water is now moving by memory, because it knows it used to move through that area, but there is no longer any pipe. So we need to work on our distribution network. Then revenue, loss of revenue. There's a lot of non-revenue water. In other words, a lot of leakages, and also people are not paying. A lot of people who get the water, who pirate the water, they don't pay their rates. Now that non-revenue water creates a problem. In other words, the ecosystem is then cut, and we cannot replenish the chemicals, upgrade the water, and so forth. So we need to get smart metering in place so that we reduce the revenue loss. And then secondly, we are not getting bonds from central government. You cannot build infrastructure of a big city through cash from residents like a Niconet vendor. We need to have municipal bonds. You hear of loans for tractors, loans for seed, loans for this. You never hear loans for infrastructure of Harare. And ironically, everybody lives in Harare, the ministers and big business. We need municipal bonds so that we upgrade the infrastructure, build the dams, so we can deal with the water situation.
Interesting. His Worship Mafume. Just before we jump into a very interesting issue about your relationship as the Council and the Minister of Local Authority. I think we just need to take a little short break. We'll be back after this message. And thank you so much for joining us back. We are at the second episode, second part of the program where we are having an interview with this worship, Jacob Mafume, the newly appointed mayor for Harare. Your worship, there's an issue that has been bogging council and government. We have had wars for a very long time. If my memory serves me well, I think it goes all the way back to the times of Minister Chombo, where we first witnessed executive powers being removed from mayors. If you may just walk us through and make our viewers understand better, if you had executive powers as the mayor, what is it that you could have done for Harare? And how much has that affected, or how much is that affecting service delivery since those changes were made?
It's a huge disadvantage that there is no executive mayor for Harare, because you then have to be elected on your vision, which you have to push through persuasion and other committees. And you cannot exactly account, you cannot be accountable to the electorate. One thing that an executive mayor has is the accountability. You will set your priorities and you then are judged on those priorities because you are executing. So one of the major problems we have is that lack of an executive mayor. We cannot have a city like Harare being run by a ceremonial mayor. It does not make sense. We've got over 10,000 employees, over 46 hospitals, over 37 schools, over a fire brigade, a municipal police. We've got a whole planning department, refuse collection. It's a huge ecosystem which requires an ultimate person in charge. And the problem that we would have, if I was the executive mayor, I will be able to follow the priorities of the residents. Priorities of the priorities of the residents are issues like water, like what you're saying in terms of water, issues of roads, issues of refuse collection, and issues of sewer, then lighting. I mean, that's basically what residents need from the city to be able to live. And then you have education and other additional needs. We would then have focused that and focused all the revenues of Harare to that job. Now the revenues of Harare go elsewhere, and the priorities sometimes are decided elsewhere, which creates a dissonance between what the electorate needs, what the electorate is elected for, and what other people demand. For example, I'm being supervised by people who we beat in Harare. So you win against a person, and that person becomes your supervisor.
How is the reporting structure, just out of interest?
Yes, all local governments report to the Ministry of Local Government. So we answer to the minister, who can issue directives from time to time. Of course, the Constitution has expanded our role as councils, but that Urban Councils Act has not been aligned with the Constitution. Therefore, it still has the same old reporting structures. And so therefore, sometimes when you get a directive, you have to comply unless it's illegal. And they do issue directives from time to time. But at the same time, you have an electorate that has elected you to do a task which you cannot do freely. In a democratic society, the electorate is the one that should judge you after the end of 5 years. But here, you are interfered with and you are judged within those 5 years.
Mm-hmm. There's been an issue of where I know the government has been blamed for not funding council, and I know there have been issues of specifically water purification and tender issues. I need to understand who cleans and who pays for Harare water, whose budget cleans our water.
Well, the budget for Harare water is supposed to be the ratepayer. Mm-hmm. The way it works, you're supposed to pay for the water, get it cleaned, and it comes back. So what has happened is that because of the monetary policy changes, when we were using US dollar, it was fairly easier because we were getting the US dollar from the resident and paying directly to the supplier of chemicals. Now, when you introduce another currency, which is the Zimbabwean currency, it therefore means we have to queue in the line for foreign currency at the Reserve Bank, or whoever is dishing foreign currency at that particular time. Now I think the Minister of Finance is involved. Now that is where the rub comes in, because currency at a national level and diverse priorities. And you get the Zim dollar, you are then supposed to bid for the foreign currency. Your charges are based on the levels of 1:1. So you are using more money than what you are collecting to bid for foreign currency for the same service. So it's a system designed not to work. It doesn't work. It is a system which, remember when we were in primary school, we used to say it can't.
It can't.
Yes. So this is the system that we are using. We are using an it can't system to try and solve current problems. Many of our budgetary issues are on the basis of it can't, because we used a 1:1 budget, and now there is an auction rate where there is an official value, which has put inflationary pressures on who supplies us. And therefore, we are in a budgeting conundrum. And that budgeting conundrum requires us to have a monetary policy that talks to each other, that talks to the cities, that talks to business. Our monetary policy seems to speak to what central government only wants, and there's minimum consultations with municipal authorities, who are some of the biggest movers, where central government gets most of its money, because they get most of its money from the activities in Harare. But yet the goose that lays the golden egg is being shaved by very painful hair cutters.
So I need then to now to help me understand when you are having such an it can't situation, is this politics over matter? Because half the times we are hearing even the Minister of Local Authority and ZANU PF-led government blaming the council for failing to clean up refuse, clean up the water, collect refuse, and provide basic water services. How responsible, what role is the government playing in as much as making sure that your water is also clean?
We need a predictable economic and a predictable standard operating procedure. Look at ZESA. When ZESA started giving electricity meters,
Yeah,
and making electricity bills prepaid, that freed a lot of electricity. That reduced and it allowed it, and when it was freed, to allow it to charge market rates. It is commonsensical. It is the same with the fuel. When it is being charged in US and it follows the market rate, it's commonsensical. The only problem with the fuel now is that there are too many taxes and there is additional rent-seeking behavior as compared to other countries. But if you use a commonsensical approach to these things, City Council, you are providing water. Provide water not for a profit, but at least with a slight markup from your cost. Provide it prepaid. Put a smart water meter. We do that, we'll be able to give water to a whole lot more people, and we'll be able to pay for the chemicals because we'll be tracking the movements in the monetary policy. Yes, there will be people who will fall on hardships, but we need a policy to deal with those in hardships. The situation where we are in is where we make the exception the rule, and the rule the exception. It therefore creates an it can't operating framework where we are busy like a dog chasing our tail.
I need to quickly draw you to an issue. I understand that you are in an MDC-led council, and you seem to be having a pro-poor policy, but many people are not happy about the recent hikes of rates in local authority rates. I need to understand, is that part of your policy? Because now rates are hiking, and you have rightfully said that you also need to have that liberty to make sure that you can charge as much as you want. But people are saying that the economy is not allowing us to be paying that much. How do you handle that? Because at paper you seem to be pro-poor, but come to the actual payment, people are paying so much.
We are pro-poor. What has happened in our economy is that our government has pushed inflation. So if you look at it, we have not even increased, as it were. We have adjusted the prices. Remember, it is the citizens whom we trade with. The resident who we buy chemicals from is charging us in foreign currency. The resident whom we buy fuel from is charging us in foreign currency. All our residents have changed the prices on goods and services that they provide to the city. Now, we cannot take from the residents, then put in a subsidy in between, and then give out the same product at a cheaper rate. It can't. It won't work. We will collapse as a city council. What we need is to come to a compromise. Yes, we cannot follow market prices religiously, but we need to come to a compromise where we can operate as a city council, where we can provide basic minimums so that we survive the COVID period. And then we need to deal with the fundamental economic policy that government is pursuing so that we are able to give representations as voters and as residents that the government has completely followed an economic policy that does not make sense or that will lead to the collapse of not only municipalities. Almost every business is screaming, crying because of the economic policy, and also every individual is screaming, crying because of the economic policy. The issue is we need a coherent economic policy that will allow to do some of these things. These are automatic. It's not rocket science. We're not the biggest city in the world. What we are doing is done at a bigger scale by other cities in the world. We should be able to get experts to come in if we are down to advise us on how to do these things. But ironically, most of these cities in the regions have got Zimbabwe Zimbabwean experts. And once you take a Zimbabwean out of Zimbabwe, they will be running the biggest companies in South Africa, running the biggest cities in South Africa, building the biggest cities in South Africa. You'll find Zimbabwean engineers there and so forth. A Zimbabwean normally does not fail to work. Bring him back to Zimbabwe and make him top engineer at City Council at Isesa. The person acts as if he doesn't know where electricity comes from. It is the environment that is got a problem, not our expertise or not our people not knowing what to do. But Zimbabwe creates an environment where it can't.
I'm going to chip a little bit into the politics, but if you may just explain to us on the environment exactly what are the issues that you think could be changed in our environment that would create an enabling environment.
We need to remove economic planning from political hands. We need our monetary policy to follow the market, to follow economic principles as we are taught in the books, that if you cannot afford to support a currency, don't introduce it. If you cannot afford to do incessant government expenditure, don't do it. If you cannot afford big government, have a small government. Deal with corruption, deal with wastage, deal with revenue leakages, follow a proper economic and monetary policy. Once you do that, you are able to allow business, farmers, and the whole economy is suffering. Farmers are producing tobacco. They can't access the foreign currency for the tobacco that they've produced. Maize producers, everybody is screaming because of the economic policy. So what we need here is a coherent, sustainable economic policy. Once we get that, Zimbabweans know what to do. Zimbabweans know how to produce electricity, how to move water from point A to point B, how to move sewage from point B, and we all know how to repair roads. We cannot be learning how to make a tarred road as Zimbabweans. Yeah. So to say we can't do it is a misnomer. We even know how to make cars. We used to assemble cars in Zimbabwe. We know how to transport people. We used to have trains that you could sleep in, drink in, and travel from point A to point B. We can't be developing in reverse. In other words, we cannot be turning the country a bush from an industrialized area. Harare used to be beautiful. Harare was the city of dreams. When I came into Harare, I only came with a suitcase. In Harare, I then had a wife, a business, house, children, and everything. Harare has made me. Yeah. Harare has made billionaires. Harare has made Olympiads. Harare has made tennis champions. Harare has made boxing champions. Harare has made Formula One engineers, and so forth. Cricketers, golfers, Nick Price, have all been produced by Harare. We owe Harare to make it beautiful again. We need to give it back to Harare. It has made billionaires in US dollar terms, Strive Masiwa. So, if Harare has made us, why can't we not repair Harare?
Your worship, let me keep you there at expectations versus delivery. We have seen a lot of rather anti-pro-poor policies being done, driven, or should I say delivered by your council. Please walk through with us. Why is it that we have seen a lot of fights between our poor guys in the streets, the vendors? They're always being fought up and down by municipal police. Half the time we see their ways are being literally taken away from them. They're chased around, and these ways we hear of stories that they're actually being shared at the backyard by municipal police. What is the policy on the pro-poor? Because we definitely have a country with a large unemployment rate, and your council is busy up and down running with these poor vendors. and thank you so much to the third and last segment where we are having tipping points. Today we've got the newly elected mayor, His Worship Jacob Mafume. Thank you so much once more again. As we close this interview, and we're going to be opening up lines so that we get to speak to a couple of callers who are watching us live from wherever you're calling us from through. There's going to be a number that's going to be put up on the screen. But just before we open up lines, I just need to have my last question to you, Your Worship. They've been running battles that I need to understand between the government and the town clerk. I know the town clerk has also been having clashes with the council. Please walk with us. How is the structure? Because we've been having these issues for a very long time. Can you break it down for us? What role does the town clerk play in? What role does the mayor really play in? How come the town clerk looks like he's much more powerful than the mayor himself?
Yeah, when the executive powers were taken, it was deliberately designed to remove the executive powers, and they were placed within the town clerk. So the town clerk took the executive power. So he is the executive. He's the accounting officer in terms of legislation. So he's the one who accounts in terms of what happens in council.
Who appoints the town clerk, and how is the process?
The problem is that the town clerk process is a by appointment process. What happens is you interview 3 people, you interview a lot of people, you're supposed to then name 3. Then you take them to the what is called the local government board. The local government board is the one that then approves the town clerk. It can get in any of the 3 in no particular order. That's where the rub is. Or it can reject all the 3 names that you've presented and ask you to do the interview process again. So that means the town clerk has a dual reporting responsibility, and the ministry becomes the ultimate arbiter. So you will find that the minister has more power in relation to the town clerk than the councils, because they approve his firing, they approve his hiring. So he has, can I say, he's a proverbial saving 2 masters guy, who then has problems in terms of if the master's interests diverge, he then has a problem. As long as the master's interests are convergent, he can work. He will then have to choose which master he must then listen to more. And that creates a problem, and that is what has brought conflict among these 2 offices. And then what happens, because the town clerk is also a person, and all these are people, so he also deals with the politics and deals with everything else to be able to get an advantage should he be so minded. What is needed, it becomes a delicate and an act of diplomacy for the 2 offices to be functioning together.
Mm-hmm. So naturally, the clerk reports to both the mayor and the government directly.
Yes.
Is that the hierarchy? Is it how it works?
He reports. He is the ultimate supervisor in terms of law. Is council. He reports to council, as it were, in terms of being supervised on a day-to-day basis and discipline and so forth. But his appointment and his firing has to be in concurrence with government.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever a situation in the past where you had a cordial, a good working relationship between the mayor and the and GM? I just need to understand in the past.
In the past, yes. I mean, you work well if politics does not interfere, because all you need basically is to get services going, provide refuse, blah blah, plan the city, get all these things. These are common interest issues. The problem is where politics hits the surface or politics hits the road. That's where the political interests will diverge and an area of conflict arises. Then you have problems.
So far, I know there's been a very big issue as far as the budgetary issues is concerned, and how much has been budgeted to the Ministry of Local Government and Authority. I need to understand, how much are you getting, and how much, or maybe in terms of percentage, would you think you would have wanted so that there is a better service delivery in the local authorities, specifically Harare?
The law is very clear. We are supposed to get a percentage of the national budget. We are not getting that.
At all?
No, not at all. There's no allocation. The allocation is spoken about, is not given. If it's given in dribs and drops. then in terms of the Health Act, we are supposed to be matched. The funds that we spend on health are supposed to be matched by government in terms of the law. That has not happened since 1996. They've not matched the investment in health. You must remember that we are the biggest primary health care service provider, and we are the biggest maternity health care service provider, and we are the only before COVID service provider in relation to infectious diseases, and we are leading the effort.
How have you been coping? I know most cancer hospitals have been taking care of this, and the biggest institution so far to start testing and taking care of COVID patients was your hospital.
Yes.
Yes.
We are running a debt, a bill to government. The residents are paying. The government says it has taken over this. It has not brought money. We are paying the workers.
So what role is the government playing since they took over?
That's what we are saying. That the money is not where the amount is.
Mm-hmm.
We need them to take care of our personnel bills. We need them to take care of the renovations. We need them to take care of the month-to-month bills that come with running infectious diseases, hospitals, and also the tracer teams. I've been talking to my team that, look, probably we just need to send an invoice to government and say this is the invoice for all the money we are spending on health, and particularly the increased spending out of because of the COVID period. We're not getting.
Has there been any communication towards this? Why are they not supplementing this?
We are asking. They've brought in some money, some 30 million there, some odd 10 million, and so forth. Oh, but that's paltry. That's paltry. This has been a Herculean effort on behalf of the council. There's been a huge effort it has taken a huge toll on our workers. Some who have been infected by COVID, some whom we had to train. And all this we have done on the limited resources that we get from residents. It's unsustainable. We ought, and we are going to send a bill to central government through parliament, directly through our ministry, to say, hey, the residents have been paying this, they need assistance.
Mm-hmm. Let's speak about your vision. Waiting for our live callers. What do you foresee, Harare? What are the major, specifically long-term aspects or issues that you would want to see?
Well, we need to turn Harare into a smart city. We need to turn Harare into a city that talks to its residents. We need Harare to be able to communicate with its individual residents. Harare that speaks, where is on your phone. You can pay your bills on your phone, where you can check where you are on your phone, where you can check your services digitally, a city that speaks to you with roads that are smart, that are able to communicate with the motorists, with streetlights that are able to communicate with the pedestrians, with an environment that is adjustable, a city that is organic, that is there for the residents, that talks to the residents, that takes care of the security of the residents. A city that can warn you when you are driving that, hey, you've got your seatbelt off, or your child is about to fall, or there has been an accident in this area, or there is that in that area, or you can get fresh produce here and there, like every other city in the world. Cities that talk. Cities are organisms,
Mm-hmm.
and they are alive.
Speaking of that point, I've been following this closely. We have noticed that there have been some cameras that have been installed around Harare, and the way I've been following this with keen interest, it looked like it was the Ministry of ICT that is implementing a smart city project. I needed to know if at all, in light of this move, are they doing this in consultation of the local authority, or they're just doing it as government? Whatever it is, who is running this project?
That's why I was saying that it needs to be. As you know, it's not only government departments, it's also even private business. Most of them have got CCTVs. And in other countries, these things talk to each other. These things are able to communicate. These things become a product of a huge ecosystem that enhances the quality of life of the residents of the particular city. That reduces crime, that reduces accident, that reduces uncomfortability, that makes the citizen feel secure in their city. So we need to catch up with the rest of the world in terms of that. And then we also need to look at our transport system. We are still on analog in relation to transport. We don't have light rail. We don't have a proper bus service. We don't have linkages to huge distances and dormitory towns. And because of that, we have put pressure on our land. Everybody wants to live closer to the center because we take too long to transport someone from Chegutu, from Marondera, from Rua, from Mazoe, and so forth. We need an integrated transport system that reduces the time a person takes to move from Chegutu to Harare. If we reduce it to 30 minutes, if we say every 100 kilometers, in a radius of 150 kilometers, you can travel within that radius within 30 minutes. We will put less pressure. We will build more comfortable residential areas outside Harare because we've reduced the travel time. And therefore, and will also allow our open spaces and our green belts to breathe because people will not have too much pressure to live close to the city because the transport system is efficient. That's what happens everywhere in the world. So we need to make the city work, communicate, and deal with those things. So we need to lay a foundation whereby we are able to do that. And then we also have to look at how we use space. You know, how much space do you need? If you look at South Africa, look at New York, the big cities, they can use effectively space. They go higher. Mbare should be higher. It's closer to town. Most of those houses should be 3 stories, 4 stories. That will bring income for the house owner and will also make more people live closer to town, and it will breathe life to their shopping centers. We'll have meaningful
Are you
malls.
aware of, sorry, you just brought something straight into my mind. When you, I know there used to be a talk about refurbishing Mbare, and there was a Bill Gates and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funding that was supposed to have been availed for the reconstruction of that place. Are you aware of such information?
Yeah, I know. I'm right.
That is happening.
Right now, I'm going to engage who did that initiative. I do understand that when we got the first tranche of the money, we used it well, acquitted ourselves well, and that somewhere, somehow, no one applied for the second tranche, or the relationship just disappeared with the changes of politics. But we need to get those foundations back. We will be able to increase and help us. So I'll be talking to Mayor Masunda, who is elderly, is our fatherly figure, is a city father. We will ask him to re-engage, reconnect us with those initiatives so that we rebuild and we remake, we enhance value, because it has to make sense to the residents. If Mbare goes higher, if Mfakos, Glenview, Highfields goes higher, it will mean the city grows, our economy grows. And then if we improve our transport system and our service delivery, it will mean that people can live further from Harare but still contribute to the economy of Harare. You don't have much pressure to build within Harare. And that's all it takes, and that's how other cities have dealt with the problem of space. They've simply gone higher, reduced the space in which they live in, and also made people travel longer distance faster.
Please allow me to just take a little bit back the clashes. I'm so much worried about the pro-poor issues just before we call it a wrap. I need to understand 2 quick issues, Your Worship. There's an issue of combis. We have had a lot of inconsistency, and this has been a business sustaining various families, and it looks like the government of the day is completely banned combis into Harare. Whose jurisdiction is this, and what is your feeling towards the issue of combis coming back to Harare?
We need an integrated. Yes, combis have had a lot, but we must thank the commuter omnibuses. They have transported a nation when the nation had no clue how to transport a nation. I know they get a lot of flack. I know they have got behavioral issues, and they need to deal with that as an industry. They need to modernize, become more polite, but the fact remains is that they took me to college. They took you to college. They took you to see your first girlfriend. They've taken people to funerals. They have contributed to the transport sector for over 2 decades when the government and the municipalities just simply dropped the ball. And these young men and probably women transported the nation, kept the nation moving from point A to point B. For that, we need to acknowledge, yes, they have their problems, the way they drive the cars and so forth. But in the absence of an integrated transport policy as a nation, they step in to fill the void, and they've done it. But now we don't need to punish them as the arch villains of this process. It is us, the policymakers, the people in authority, who have failed them. And therefore we need, as they come back, because one of the immediate tasks that I have as mayor is to reopen the economy of Harare. We can no longer continue shutting down the economy of Harare. The economy of Harare has been shut down by COVID, but it has to be opened. Otherwise, we're going to have a bigger disaster.
How are you going
hands.
to be opening it up, especially at this stage where many people are actually worried that there's a surge of the COVID-19 virus? Talking of opening it up, does this not also expose the various citizens?
We have been able to be not as hard hit as the other cities. We are now being hard hit with hunger. We are now being hard hit with starvation, lack of jobs, and revitalizing the is going to take longer if we don't open this economy. We can see that mainly this COVID is now being used for political events. Churches are coming out, funerals continue, activities, if you look outside town, cars are traveling, and so forth. But you cannot shut down an economy of Harare, which is basically informal and based on trade for this long, and expect the country to survive. We now need to urgently open the economy of Harare safely, yes, with provisions, but we will talk to the ministry, we will talk to the health experts, and our position is that we can safely open the economy of Harare. We need people back trying to make money, earning a living. We can't allow people to starve in their homes.
My last question to you, your worship. We have been witnessing persistent houses being demolished, and half the time this is the council that is actually running such an activity, where we see the council, and of course maybe in some cases here and there we don't understand why there is much more presence of the police and soldiers recently destroying houses. What is the government's, or what is the council's position towards this issue? Because we really never understand exactly who is in charge. What is the policy towards this issue of
Yeah, the problem is that, like I mentioned earlier, without an integrated housing policy between the central government and local government and the private sectors, we will of pressure on Harare. We need to work with issues that allow people to live further but still be close. It's a question of transportation. The pressure on...
The question now is, who is demolishing these houses?
Yeah,
Houses being demolished.
yeah, some of it is cancelled. If people build on areas that are not designated for building, those houses will be demolished.
Yeah, so that's
that part of it is cancelled. The recent ones at the National Monument, I think people had built at an area which was designated for the National Heroes Monument, and they are land barons who pretend that they have authority from somewhere, lie to...
Is there a way to solve this? Sorry, Your Worship. Zimbabweans are falling prey to this issue. Because I'm just buying a house. I'm buying a stand. I probably am not legally conversant to try and check around these issues. And now that I'm here, I'm staying there. And
it's the culture. It's the culture for Zimbabweans. Yes, the city and authorities should communicate better. They should be having interactive platforms where people can ask, is this a legitimate development?
Yeah.
And they get an answer.
Exactly.
The problem we have in Zimbabwe is that people have a trying culture. They try.
Yeah.
And sometimes they know, and they've been told, that this area will be demolished. But there's a sixth sense that tells them that we can win. Okay. It will win. You know, there's been so much forgiveness on errant behavior that sometimes when you tell people that this is illegal, they don't believe you, because people have invaded farms like Hopley and so forth, and they've been regularized. So people have had houses. So there's been a relationship of politics with issues around rule of law and regulations that even when you tell a person that no, this area is going to be demolished, a person sometimes says build because he knows of another area that ought to have been demolished which was not demolished. So we need to have consistency as local government and central government on how we implement laws. If we implement them in a zigzag fashion, or in a way where sometimes we forgive certain behavior, sometimes we don't, we confuse the residents. At the end of the day, they don't know how to react, they don't know, and they don't take us seriously when we warn and give warnings. So it becomes a mixture of misunderstanding between the authorities and the residents. And you're right, these things ought to be done better, these things ought to be done more uniformly, and these things ought to be done fairly.
Would it be fair to that I think going forward, out of genuine concern, that council should have probably maybe a public, I don't know, platform, website, where someone can easily just double check whether or not where I'm being offered land is a legal
Yes,
place.
yes, yes, yes.
Everyone is desperate for
Yeah,
land.
I've told our guys that they should do that. And I've also had a meeting with civic society this afternoon and told them that they must have a project tracker of council projects. They must take an active role in these things and putting out there to the public. To say as a combined Harare Residents Association, they know Westley is being developed. They tell people that council has got 10 projects in the works. This is at the stage where they are at. This is how you apply for this project, and so forth and so forth. This project is a private developer. This is how you buy from it, and so forth and so forth. This is a society that should be able to create mechanisms that allow people to
Because
get
it honestly doesn't
information
make sense.
Easily.
Yeah,
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, we have seen houses, your worship, being destroyed. Let's all have the burden of our brethren. Why do you need to wait as council to see a house at roof level to start destroying it now? Because in all fairness, you have been seeing and noticing that there's construction happening.
When your house,
why wait for a house to be fully built to then destroy it?
Such a thing.
Yeah.
If you are building a house and you get to roof level, because you must go to the district office for your plan to be approved at every stage. So when you go to the district office and you tell them you are building at so and so place, they will tell you, no, my friend, you should not be building at that place, at foundation level. Your foundation must be inspected. You finish the slab, it must be inspected. You build the walls, it must be inspected.
So these people are not even doing
They are not doing that. Houses are moving up Chinese style overnight. A person is moving to finish a house in a week. But the system is not, because we've got an inspection regime that should, because what builders tell them is that build and then you regularize later on. You just pay a fine and a penalty for not having gone through the stages. That's very dangerous, because at the end of the day, your builder builds, but the council will come in at the inspection stage when you are already putting internal finishings and says, no, but this place, in terms of our records, there is supposed to be a national heroes acre. And you have certainly not built a mausoleum.
Yeah.
House is a mausoleum. If you want to live there, you can't.
Yeah.
This place is supposed to have mausoleums and all nicely named graves. So, urge citizens and residents of Harare not to do that. There is a process to build. There is a process that have to be followed. Follow them, and you won't have problems. Yes, our inspectors have to come when things are being done. They have to stop it, and so forth and so forth. We will try to give more powers, more resources to our monitoring teams so that they get ahead of the curve.
I want to jump quickly to a very corruption, but just before I just go to that area, Your Worship, I need to understand something. Harare is growing, Zimbabweans are growing world over. Do we have stands? We are youths, we are young. Are we going to be able to get stands from Harare City Council?
Yes.
Is there land? We need to know, is there an expansion area that way? And where are such areas where we are likely going to get land?
We will work on that. I think we need to work on the sizes of the land we are giving. We need to go higher. We need to build apartments, blocks. We know the housing stock and the flats that we have, some of them were built by pre-independence, and we need to get back on that program and start building flats, council housing, council projects, like it used to happen in old days in council houses. And that's a program we are going to resuscitate. We used to have a whole building session with teams that would build a suburb in the shortest period of time, experts and so forth. And we need to go back to that era, and we are going to go back to that era where we build. We can't still be fighting for houses that were built before 1980 by the previous white administrators, whose qualifications was only Form 2. Right now, if you throw a stone in council, you'll find masters, lawyers, engineers, architects, but they can't build an anthill.
Zimbabwean Harare City has been hit by, I'm not so sure if I should use the right word, it should be allegations of mass corruption. We have had some certain councillors being arrested. I just need to get an update and your perception over this matter.
Well, the thing with corruption is you can't fight. Corruption is being fought from a center, it's being fought from the president's office, and therefore it follows a certain route. Our councillors were denied bail, but one minister went in and got bail. So when you do that, you can easily make allegations against anyone.
Are they all still now, are they still in prison?
Well, they came out on bail, but they were spent there 3 weeks. So when you fight corruption corruptly, you have a problem. It becomes a smear campaign. You can be arrested today, I can be arrested tomorrow, and it's more of a smear campaign. Yes, some of the matters are sub judice. I won't talk about them without infringing certain rules. But here we are. We do believe that some of these allegations, they have not been proven. And the way they are being done, for example, they have taken out of session the whole surveying department of council. I mean, nowhere in the world that happened. We've got people who are urban planners who plan properties for over 20 years. And simply because a plan was wrongly done, they've been taken out of circulation and prevented to come from council. And we are going to suffer for that, because it's like taking your only eye surgeon in the country for one surgery that went wrong and putting him in jail and stopping him from doing eye surgeries until the case is finished. It's just a vindictive and malicious process that will cripple the operations of the city.
Yes, that's your worship, Jacob Mafume, there as bishop. I thank you so much for having us right here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Great.